Voice of the Sea, learning from experts across the ocean.
In this episode, we're learning about the different types of algae and invertebrates that live in the intertidal environment in Hawaii. We're talking with Joanna Filipoff from the UH College of Education's Curriculum Research and Development Group to learn about how teachers and students are working with researchers to monitor changes in Hawaii's intertidal environment throughout the state in a project called OPIHI, which stands for Our Project in Hawaii's Intertidal. Hi, Joanna.
Hi, Kanisa. So the intertidal is the area between high and low tides. In Hawaii, it's about 1 meter. The intertidal is along the coast. Every coastline has an intertidal, but we focus on the rocky intertidal area.
And what is it that you're trying to observe?
So we mostly focus on limu or algae. It's really culturally important in Hawaii. And there's a lot of different species of like macroalgae that you can see even at this environment. A lot of things that can rub against my skin will cause me reactions. And so I wear gloves and I wear pants and long sleeves. We're both wearing shoes that allow us to walk around safely. So these have felt on the bottom.
Oh, and I see as we're getting into the wetter area, there's more and more limu growing. Ooh, there's a cone snail in there too.
So cone snails.
You see the end of it?
Yeah. It's actually one of the things that we have to just be a little bit careful about when you're exploring this environment. And they're triangular shells. They're predatory. So at the tip of the triangle, you can there's a stinger essentially that comes out and can pierce a prey before the cone snail consumes it. And you just don't want to be on the receiving end of that.
Ooh, and look, there's a couple of those green algae, that neomerous one.
Yeah, so I've heard this one referred to as goose poop. And when I started looking in this environment, I actually didn't think that was an algae. I thought it was some sort of worm, but that's a green algae. And then this is an algae we haven't seen yet. It's also a green algae, and it's a codium. And the Hawaiian name is Vaivaole, which means rat's foot.
Oh, sure.
These are some types of sargassum or limu kala. So there's 3 species that we often see in the intertidal, and they can look very different morphology. This is a type of green algae called Dictyosphaeria. It's a bubble algae.
Oh, it's really pretty.
There's a couple species. This one's solid inside. One of the things that we see down here, like this right here, is a blue-green algae. And can you feel that and tell me what it feels like?
Oh, it's kind of soft and squishy and a little bit slimy.
Yeah, so I've heard this one referred to as greasy, dirty hair. But this is a blue-green algae, so if you look underneath a microscope, you can tell that it looks a little different. So these are all macroalgae, and blue-green's actually a bacteria.
How can a bacteria be so big that I can see it like that?
So it's
gone.
Macroalgae will branch, whereas these are chains of cells connected together, but there's not going to be any branching. Here's a sea cucumber. Organisms that are in this environment tend to be cryptic, some of them, and hard to see. So this one is a sea cucumber called Holothuria atra.
Oh, he's all covered in sand.
And he's totally covered in sand. I'm picking them up really gently.
Oh!
So of course you're not going to want to stick your hand in crevices, and there's definitely a couple of things like crabs and certain types of snails that you want to avoid. But a lot of things are used to being exposed for short periods of time. I feel pretty comfortable holding this guy and putting him back, and he'll be okay. Sea cucumbers are detritivores, so they're going to feed in this environment, kind of picking up things that are on the ground, and when it moves through their gut, they sort of are cleansing those little bits of algae and dead things that have some organic matter. And then they have this really interesting poop that I don't think we can see in here, but it often looks like trails of sand. So it's kind of cleaning the environment as it moves along.
The University of Hawaii's Sea Grant College program focused on Hawaii's coasts and its communities through sustainable development, safe seafood supply, sustainable coastal tourism, hazard resilience, and healthy coastal ecosystems. Hawaii's Sea Grant.
The intertidal is divided up into different zones. These are in the high intertidal, or the splash zone, that's only going to be covered by water or get wet when the tide is really high.
Okay.
Whereas the stuff that we'll look on a little bit later is going to be mostly covered with water the whole time. So these are a type of snail called neurites, and the Hawaiian name is papipi. They're clustered here kind of under a little bit of an overhang that'll protect them a little bit from the sunlight and allow them to retain moisture.
So they're actually able to move and gather together?
Yeah, so they definitely, a lot of things in the intertidal move around, some slower than others, so neurites do move. At Diamond Head, there's sort of a snail zone here. We have a lot of neurites that are obvious, and then around here we actually have a type of snail called a vermetid. Right around here there's actually a lot of vermetids, and they have these little holes that kind of make this area very dark. And so this is, at this area, it's kind of in the middle of the intertidal zone. The algae in this zone, the genus, the scientific genus is Padina, and the Hawaiian name means ear, or papeiao, so limu papeiao. It's a calcified algae. These white rings are actually calcifications. So calcified algae is going to be really gritty, so not eaten. And this is a brown algae. There's three main classifications of algae: red, green, and brown. These two species right here are mostly brown. So they are brown algae. And it's important when you're learning them because you want to know where to look in the book. And
this one is a turbinaria. It's kind of really hard brown algae.
Yeah, so this one, these turbinaria are really high up in the intertidal. There's a lot more in the lower area. Here we have some really nice turbinaria. And this one is you can kind of tell, it looks like the feather ceremonial sticks that Hawaiians used with royalty. And so kahili.
And I know in some places, like in Tahiti, when we talk to scientists there, that it's overgrowing their reefs. But it is edible by fish and people?
It's edible by people. It's very crunchy. I think to me it tastes sort of like an Asian pear. It's very watery, but like a nice crunch.
And so both the Padina and the turbinaria, those are browns. And you said there's other colors that we can look for.
Yeah, so I noticed a green one over here, and it's super bright. Here's a green.
Oh yeah.
In biology, there's exceptions to every rule. But brown algae tends to be brown, and green algae tends to be green. So this is a green algae. It's also calcified, and it's called Halimeda. So they look like kind of like little discs.
And these are also really common deeper in water, and they contribute a lot to sand on shore.
Yeah. There's a lot of different species. So when I say Halimeda, it actually covers a lot of different species that look like this. So a different species would be found deeper. But with teachers and students, we tend to just go down to the genus rather than species when we're talking about scientific names, because some of these are really hard to ID if you're not looking at a microscope.
And so then how does the information that you're collecting tell you about this area over time if you're not able to go as deep in your identifications?
We can show how things are changing on a community level. I wasn't sure if we were gonna like really see these habitat changes, but we have. Like in the last year, some of the sites that we've gone to are really different than they were 10 years ago. For instance, on this site, there's an algae called Spiridia that's kind of fuzzy, and we really didn't see it 10 years ago when we came out here. So either we weren't recognizing it and IDing it, or it's just changed over time. I think part of the way that you assess health is looking at change over time. So if you haven't looked at an environment, you don't know what healthy is. You need that baseline. So the OPIHI studies 10 years ago, we have some of that baseline for what things looked like, and we can now say, okay, we think they've changed. So we're looking at the biology, and the biology is based on chemical and physical factors. And so when something is different in the biology, what is driving that? And we're trying to start answering those questions about what's driving changes in biology with some of the projects that we have going on. Now that we have undergraduates that are also partaking in the project, they're collecting some more of that nutrient data. So looking at different types of algae and isotopes to look at the influences that maybe groundwater or runoff is having on the community.
And so why would you be concerned with different nutrients and the type of algae that are growing?
Some algae respond more to higher nutrients and will grow faster.
And where do the nutrients come from?
So nutrients, they can come from a lot of different places. So fertilizer, for instance, and runoff, and also groundwater, so cesspools. So in Hawaii, we have a lot of people that are still using cesspools, and those nutrients will seep into our groundwater and then come out at the shoreline. So a project like OPIHI, that's citizen science, gets a lot of hands and eyes looking at this stuff, and you're able to collect data a lot faster than an individual scientist would be able to.
Sure, because you can only come out here on a low tide, and the low tide only lasts for so long, and there's only so many low tides during the day.
If a really good low tide is coming up, you can have like 10 field trips going on to different sites all over the place, whereas a scientist can just go to one place.
Oh, sure. Let's take a look at some more of the algae.
We saw some brown algae and we saw some green algae, and red algae is tricky because it can look brown or green. For instance, this looks green, but it's shaded, so it's...
what a tricky guy.
So this algae is called Laurencia, and it's actually a red algae.
No way.
And that you can tell.
It looks green, Joanna.
It does look green. So red algae can be a little tricky, but you can see that it's bright green on the surface, and then deeper, it's a darker green. So brown algae tend to be the same color brown from the tip to the holdfast. And green algae also tend to be the same, but red algae often have this shading going on. So that's a trick for talking about red algae. And of course, some red algae is red, but red algae can be red, brown, green, purple, all different colors. So here's a type of brown. This one is called limu kala.
Oh, sargassum.
So this one is, the scientific name is Sargassum aquifolium, and the Hawaiian name is limu kala, and it's used in Hawaiian ceremonies of forgiveness. Every organism's name tells a story. So learning about what it means in Latin or Greek or Hawaiian will help you ID it.
And probably help you to remember it too.
Yeah. Well, I love this environment because I don't get to swim very much because I'm allergic to all kinds of things, and I love the ocean. So this gets me involved in the ocean with my science eyes. And this really changed my perspective of what I wanted to do with my life. I love science, but this project made me realize I love teaching about science even more.
Learn more at voiceofthesea.org.
The Curriculum Research and Development Group in the College of Education at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. CRDG's training roots go back over 40 years. Through professional development programs, curriculum workshops, research on teaching methodology, individualized school and district training, and so much more. The Curriculum Research and Development Group, improving schools, improving education. CRDG.
I recently graduated from UH Manoa. I studied marine biology with certificates in marine biogeochemistry and French, just to mix it up. One of the hard parts of working in the Intertidal is everything that you're stepping on is alive. Even if it just looks like a rock, there's snails living on there, there's bacteria, everything here is alive, so it's difficult to study without, like you said, loving your science to death.
Can you show me some of the things that you are most partial to, or parts of the intertidal environment that are your favorites?
Sure. So, these really pretty big frondiose algae are always fun to look at, but I have a couple personal favorites that I think are really, really cute, just because they're tiny. They're usually in the higher intertidal. I'm looking for Bornatella.
I saw some.
There's one right here. Yeah, the little balls. So these are a couple of my favorites because they're teeny tiny balls. They're just really cute.
Oh, there's quite a few.
Yeah.
And what was the name of those?
They're Bornatella spherica. So if you pick them up, it's just a round ball.
Oh, and that's its whole, this green part, that's the whole algae.
That's the whole thing. So here we have another species of red algae. It's called Acanthophora spicifera. This is one of the more prolific invasive species that we see here among the Hawaiian Islands. You can find it pretty much anywhere. It's easily identified by these whorls of spines that go spirally around the branch. It also reproduces by fragmentation, so any little piece that breaks off can float away and replant and grow an entire new organism. In this bucket, we've picked a couple of the common organisms that you can see. This is called Dasia. So it's kind of fluffy, and when you put it in the water, it shimmers a little bit. It's a little bit iridescent.
And that's a red alga.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It usually looks just like that. It's usually a light pinkish color, and it shimmers like nice white and.
Ooh, it's soft.
Yeah, it's soft and fluffy.
Oh wow, it's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. So that's one of the ones you can see around. This is called Dictyota samvichensis. It also shimmers underwater, so when you take it out, you don't see that as much. It looks just like a normal brown, nondescript color. When you put it back in the water, it may
Oh yeah, I can see
shimmer
a little
kind
bit
of blue. Yeah. This Dictyota can be distinguished from a very similar species that you also see commonly in the intertidal, which is called Dictyota acutuloba, because acutuloba doesn't shimmer and it has very twisty, spirally branches. So that's one easy way to tell those two apart. Here we have Amansia glomerata. It's usually a dark red, a really rich dark red. This one's bleached a little bit. And you almost always see it in these nice rosette clumps. They can get pretty big as well. They're usually attached to a hard substrate, and that's another red alga as well.
And this is one that lives sort of lower in the intertidal.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And deeper water.
Yes. This is a green alga called Microdictyon. If you look really closely, you'll see that it forms these really nice, very fine mesh nets. And you can usually see if you hold it up to the sun. They're always in these nice crunchy plates. So that's Microdictyon.
So I learned recently this can be invasive in a lot of areas, and I didn't know that. I'd always been excited to see it.
Yeah. I know some of the other species that are native here, the green algae like the caulerpa, cause a big problem in the Mediterranean because species that are brought in from somewhere else sometimes do a lot better in a brand new environment. So they can tend to take over. Yeah.
And this is one of those blue-green algae.
Yes. So if you look at it, it's dark brown. So you wouldn't necessarily know that it's a blue-green algae. It's actually a bacteria, so we call it cyanobacteria. It's a functional group. When you see it in the water, it will look like this coarse, frizzy hair, almost like, reminds me of the hair of the troll dolls from the 90s. Yeah, but it's almost always dark brown or black, and it's epiphytic usually, so that means that it can grow on top of a lot of other algae. So you won't always see it standing on its own, just attached to the bottom.
Can you tell me about your experience working on OPIHI as one of the undergraduate interns and what that has been like?
So it was really rewarding to get to go out into the field with those students on their field trips and see them light up and learn new things and learn new names that they'd never known before. And it's just really great to kind of ignite a spark in a young student. So it's really wonderful to be a part of that as an intern in OPIHI, especially just being so young as an undergraduate. You don't really know what you're doing. You're trying to figure it out. And that really, really helped me. OPIHI was the best experience I had in my undergraduate career. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was the best thing that I did, that I could have done.
Exploring Our Fluid Earth is a dynamic curriculum developed by the University of Hawaii's Curriculum Research and Development Group, teaching ocean science concepts through the disciplines of physics, chemistry, biology, and ecology. Exploring Our Fluid Earth is now available freely online. Find out more at exploringourfluidearth.org.
The University of Hawaii Sea Grant College Program, helping coastal communities of Hawaii and the Pacific through research, education, and outreach. Serving the community, from elementary to graduate students. Hawaii Sea Grant.
Sea Island Earth is working to establish new avenues for connecting research scientists with educators and communities. Sea Island Earth is working to enhance the science and ocean literacy of our island residents and visitors. Sea Island Earth is working to connect scientific research, traditional knowledge, and ocean policy. Sea Island Earth, bringing together university, government, research, and community partners to enhance ocean literacy and engage all ocean users in stewardship.